Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about what's clearly an international propaganda campaign that's going in Australia, in Britain, the United States, Canada, and other parts of Western Europe, just the white countries, where there's the claim that police are institutionally racist. Not that individual police are or are not racist, but that the very institution itself, the very structure of policing, methods of policing, are themselves racist. And what is the evidence of that? Well, there is no evidence. The only evidence they can put forward is that and this is white liberals as much as black activists, what they say is, well, the outcomes are different. In Australia, for example, black people are 3.8 times more likely to go to prison than white people are. Not far behind that is people from the Middle East, Islamic countries, Pakistanis, that sort of thing, and also the various islander communities around the Pacific are not far behind. And then white people, or Chinese and white people are sort of come down last. Now, the view that's pushed that it must be racism or institutional racism is purely based on, well, the outcomes are different. If the outcomes are different, it must be because of something evil and something bad. It's the same as there are not as many black lesbians as in chief executive officer positions. Therefore, it must be homophobia and transphobia and racism and misogyny. It must be all of those. There can be no other reason for it. So as a result, nothing's really done about the core issues, because it's only outcomes I've looked at, and that's supposed to be in itself the evidence that's institutionally racist. So we need to just unpack some of this. But if you look at all the Western countries, the white Western countries, the ratio of black people being incarcerated relative to white people, for example, is roughly the same. Now it's it's say 4.1 times in black people are 4.1 times more likely to go to prison than white people. This is like per 100,000 or per million or whatever population, but and that doesn't necessarily look at the crimes committed. It's just you go to court, how many of you go to prison? So, for example, most of the black crimes could be murder. Most of the white crimes could be, stealing a bar of chocolate at the shop. There's no catering for the severity of the crimes. Are they repeat offenders? These sorts of things. So one country is 4.1 times, blacks are 4.1 times more likely to go to prison than white people. Another country is 3.7. 3.85, 3.69. So it's between really 3.5, say, and 4.1 seems to be the range. So it holds pretty consistent no matter where you go. So different societies with different views. Some are, the black people are more in the inner city. Some are more in more rural areas. But the ratio stays about the same. Now, there's something sort of in that. Why would it stay so close? Are all these white countries equally institutionally racist? That would seem a bit odd. Even in areas where the majority of the police are black, or where the police chief is black and the local, like the mayor of the city or those sort of the attorney general's black, even in those areas, the ratio stays, more or less constant. Maybe not quite as bad where you've got radical activists prosecuting attorneys general, that sort of thing. That might be a little bit different, but they tend to focus more on the lower level crimes, which wouldn't necessarily be for a prison sentence unless that someone's a multiple repeat offender. And even then, so we're looking at something that's almost universal. Therefore, given the outcomes are again very, very close, is it because black people commit more crime, or is it because all of these places are racist? Now, if these countries are so racist? Why are black people flocking to these evil Nazi fascist racist white countries if they've got such a high chance of being arrested and sent to prison and so on? So that sort of, some of this doesn't really make sense, but nonetheless, that's the. Now let's look at the. If we look at the institutional racism, that they don't get away from different outcomes. There's one study in Australia that where again it's about four times, approximately 4 times, black people are more likely to be sent to prison. Now this is in a region of Australia that's quite left leaning, and is constantly coming out with very anti-white, anti-male, anti-straight white male rhetoric. Now, whether the rhetoric is backed up by the action, we could debate that a bit, but they're certainly not unsympathetic to black people. So if they're 4 times the amount of black people being sent to prison than white people, then that would suggest that black people are committing more crime, or that the severity of the crimes they commit is greater, or that they're all repeat offenders who are say they've got a suspended sentence, something like that, but they're on some sort of probation or parole type conditions. They violate those conditions, and then so the suspended sentence effect comes in, and so then they have to do time in prison. So. But I just want to talk a little bit about. There was a time that I went to court over a fairly trivial matter about the incorrect imposition of council taxes, that sort of stuff, and but it had to go to court given the amount of money. So I was, and this is like a court of there's sort of a junior judge, and the place was fucking mayhem. There were bodies peeling off in all directions, people queuing up, and there was a long court list, and you could see that this judge wanted to get through it, and was he was actually a homosexual activist as well. So anyway, the all these matters are being heard and getting what came across to me as being summary judgments. But the way it sort of worked was. There was many more black and brown people that were there getting being in court. So their legal aid lawyers and those sort of people tended to say, look, cop a deal for 30 days in prison, cop a deal for 3 months with weekend detention, cop a deal with this, and I can get the judge to sign off on it. It's a done deal. You can go home in 5 minutes' time. But if you want to have all the evidence heard, and all the witnesses come along and the police there with their stuff, it's probably not going to go that well for you. So cop a deal quickly, get it over and done with, spend a short amount of time in prison, and you're good to go. Now, how wise that may not be, I've looking at some of the police that were lined up for that hearing, and there's 3 police officers, because the black guy assaulted the police officers, ran away, and then there was punch ups and all sorts of struggles, and then he ran away again and more struggles, and so on. So I don't think that would look good. I don't think any judge is going to sort of smile too fondly at or look too positively at that sort of behaviour. And someone's got previous brushes with the law, so the legal aid lawyer can go up. Your Honour, Leroy's accepts he's full of contrition and he's very sorry, and and he'll cop the 30 days in prison, and and he'll do another 100 hours of community service, that sort of thing. Now the judge is sort of, okay, well, I don't have to litigate this. It could go on for hours. I can get another one off. I've got a long list of shit to get through here, so I can cross one off. The guy has got previous. I'm not, he did assault police. He's getting a bit of prison time. Done. Okay, all right then. Are you happy with that, Mr. Leroy? Leroy looks at the legal aid lawyer and nods, and off they go. And so that's a prison term there. Now some of these prison terms. So when you look at black people are arrested at 10 times the rate of white people. Just ponder that for a moment. Arrested at 10 times the rate of white people, but they only go to prison at 4 times the rate of white people. Now that goes to show you how many community service orders and various plea deals that are done. So I was having a look at that, just watching that and Leroy will do 100 hours community service, Your Honour. No, I'm not happy with that. 250 hours of community service and 1 weekend in prison, but the prison term will not be recorded on his file. Okay, then judge signs off and it's done. Those sorts of things were going on. So there was quite a lot were being sent off, black people sent off to counselling and so on. Also, if it did get to the judge, there are various arguments that were being put forward. For example, and this is something that's widespread, in the Pacific Islander communities, they've got no independent public service as such. There's no sort of independent police force or independent government. Things are very tribal. And so the authority in those places is the family or the tribal elder or the eldest member of the family. And if you embarrass the family, then you embarrass, the tribal elders and so on. So there's huge amounts of guilt and shame associated with bad behaviour there, because you embarrass the tribe and the family and the chief of the tribe and so on. And some of these people would rather die than embarrass their father or something like that. So it's very much a family thing. So they don't recognise the concept of independent authority. You can't tell me what to do. You're not a tribal elder. You're not a member of my family. You don't tell me what to do. And so they've got a very different concept of authority and how it's delivered. And the idea of being responsible to the law, codified law that says don't do this or you can do that, that's something that they culturally just can't grasp. The laws are the handed down behavioural sort of taboos or non-taboos of the tribe and their oral history, because they don't have a written history. And so the idea of written laws and codified laws, they've got no or very little concept of that, and feel that they're under no obligation to respect those laws or to adhere to them or to act lawfully to those codified laws. Now, most of the time, the Pacific Islanders come over to, say, Australia for work, and they want to send money back, these sorts of things. And the tribal elders say, I think it's a good thing that they become more accustomed to first world habits and behaviours. But once they're away from the tribal elders, once they're away from the tribe and the family, and they're cut loose from any understanding of authority and the manner in which authority is delivered and through the shame and humiliation to the family. Once they're away from that, they feel no longer obligated to behave sensibly or reasonably. And they don't really recognise the authority of the police or the law or codified law. It's something they just don't comprehend. Why should they? And so they see it as why do I have to do what you say? You've got no authority over me. I can do what I want. Why are you telling me, white man? That's white man's law, and so on. So you can see the thing, how it goes. And now they should have maybe a long-term induction process that conditions them to understand how independent law and independent public service and so how that works and how it functions and its role in society. But they're really still living the sort of maybe not quite Stone Age, but not far off it. They're still living quite Stone Age type existence in these islands now. Now, sure, in these islands they might open up a Western hotel or something. Sure, that happens. But the reality is that they're still culturally and in a developmental sense, they're still far away from a first world culture. And again, this idea of codified law and so on. So they see it as a terrible imposition that they have these people they don't know who are not related to them, called police or public servants, that are telling them what to do, and they're going to arrest them. I want you to move on here. You got no right to tell me. Fuck off. And so it can get and does get rather unpleasant, and they get arrested. Now, the arguments the lawyers make, legal aid lawyers or NGO lawyers make, is that, well, look, Jonah doesn't understand the law here, and the culture. His culture is very different, and he doesn't understand that. So, if you send him into prison, that's cultural oppression, and so on. So often they're getting community service and things like that when in reality they given the severity of the crime, they should get a prison sentence. Now, looking at White Boy, there was one case I saw was a youngish white man. I think he was 19, and he was arrested, but he come from quite a wealthy family from the looks of it. He was arrested by the police having he was supposedly drunk. He was on the street outside a drinking, some sort of cocktail lounge or something like that. He's out on the street. They told him to move back in. He told them to get lost, and then if you don't go, we'll arrest you. And then they tried to arrest him. Then there was a punch up. So it was a pretty unpleasant thing. And I noticed how much more severe the judge was with the white kid. Whereas the other kids, cultural difference, but he didn't cut the white kid any slack. Some of the profane language that was supposedly used, he didn't seem to bother about that. But the assaulting police is a serious matter, and I think it's appropriate that someone who assaults the police should do some time in prison. And there was quite, the father was there, and he clearly was a wealthy, I don't know, wealthy, but he was doing all right. And the lawyer there wasn't a cheap lawyer, and far from it. And so the kid was not doing himself any favors. He was in a nice sharp suit, and he'd obviously been to the hairdresser and had a bit of shave and so on. So he looked like an upstanding citizen. But when the judge said, "Look, you might go to prison," the dad almost passed out from a heart attack. I mean, he almost freaked. And so the kid was like, "Oh yeah, fuck you." But so there's many different ways of handling. But coming to the black situation, whether it be in Britain or whether it be in the United States or Australia, that there's a very close similarity, the amount of black people being sent to prison compared to white people. Now, the idea that it's racist is just utterly absurd. Do they commit crimes more frequently? And given they commit crimes more frequently, then there's a much higher chance that the black person committing a crime now has also committed other crimes in the past, which makes it more likely they'll go to prison, and so on. But you see the same attitude, even the blacks in America or here or in Australia or even in Britain, where the community and their hood is where the authority comes from. The idea of this independent authority in the police and so on, and you break the law, and well, I'm stronger than that guy. That guy's frightened me, so I can do what I want. I don't have to follow the law. If I follow the law, that means I'm disadvantaged, and so they see the law as being, well, that's white man's law. And even with black employees, I've hired black people in the past and found it quite difficult because they behave in a manner that's very injurious to their own position. One black guy, for example, thinking of the conversation now, he'd go out for dinner with his stripper pole dancing wife. He'd go out or girlfriend. He'd go out for dinner every night because they had a small apartment. They didn't like staying in the apartment. They didn't feel like cooking, so they go out for dinner every night. And he had no money, and he couldn't pay the rent. So he'd be trying to hassle me to give him a pay rise. And well, why? Why should you pay? Well, I like to do this. It makes me feel good. I have a good time. Why should I deny myself a good time? And why don't you restrain your expenditures and then live within your income? That's just the sort of thing a white boy would say. No, really, well, why can't you just go out for dinner less often? Yeah, but I like doing it. It makes me feel good. Why should I not do it? Why should I limit what makes me feel good? I see white guys out there having dinner. Well, maybe they got a higher income than you. maybe they busted their ass at university and high school to get a qualification for a great job. You don't have that. So live within your means, or work harder. Get an extra job, and so on. I'm trying to sort of come at that. But here's the no. Why should I? Those are the rules for white people. Why should those rules apply to me? And you got a really tough time, because their attitude is, or certainly the ones I've come across, and it wouldn't apply to every single black person in the universe, of course, is that, well, why should those rules apply to me? They're white boy rules. And I was talking about, I was adding up. I said, look, you're going out to dinner every night, and you're spending $3,000 a month just going out to dinner. 3,000, it can't be that much. It can't be that much. Add it up again. And so, you got 30 days in the month, or last month was 30 days. You're spending $100 a night. Therefore, that's white boy. That's white boy mathematics. And you've got a real struggle convincing them that they should be accountable or responsible to anything. And so they come back with these attitudes, and it's the same attitude reflected to the police. Why should I comply with these laws? That's white boy laws. It's racist laws, because white boy wrote those laws up. And you just can't explain it to them that those laws are for everybody. Everybody needs to abide by those laws, and should. It's not that they're specially white or not white or anything like that. So they again come back to this thing. Well, the authority comes from our community, it comes from our own people, and it comes from our own tribe, or our own village chieftains, or our own storytellers, or those are the people that have the authority, not anyone independent. And even if the police chief is black or something like that, or the arresting officer is black, they just say, well, you're just a flunky for the white people, so we still don't have to take any notice of you. So the idea that it's racism, of course, is utterly absurd. It's the attitude towards law and codified law, and why should it be a crime? I'm only, I don't have those nice things that the white people have. So if I steal it, why is that a crime? I'm only getting what they have. So if you want to stop me from having what they have, that means you're a racist, and so on. And it's that type of. But look, there's a thing going all over the world, and the globalists are pushing it very hard. That because anywhere where outcomes are different, in this case, in black people being arrested or sent to prison, then it must be due. It can only be due. There is no other reason. Then it must be racism by Hitler. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.